That's great. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming to this presentation. Now, I don't know if you know, attendance is mandatory, so we have to wait for about 3 million more people to show up. Why am I talking today about Desi Arnaz? Well, let me explain. Thank you. So here's a few things about Desi Arnaz you may or may not know. He arrived in America as a teenage refugee, found success as a musician, actor, orchestra leader, and producer, became the face of Cuban Americans, winning over the nation to become one of its most beloved performers. He pioneered television's 3-camera setup, shooting before a live audience, invented syndicated reruns, creating modern television, provided the world with more than 70 years of entertainment and counting, and it all started right here in Miami, literally blocks from here. So let's go back to 1920s. Now here's Desi is about 4 or 5 years old, born on March 2nd, 1917. And he was born into wealth and privilege. Here are his parents, Desiderio Alberto Arnaz and Dolores Diacha. His father was the youngest mayor in Santiago, Cuba. He became a senator in Cuba. His mother's father, one of the 3 founders of Bacardi rum. They had about 5, they had several homes, several ranches, a nice little beachside resort. So Desi grew up, he was probably going to become a politician like his father. And you can see his father already as a young man. As I mentioned, he was the youngest mayor in Santiago. He served for about 10 years. And while he was mayor in Santiago, the president of Cuba was a guy named Machado. And you might remember him. He started out as a populist, like a lot of populists do. They get full of themselves, and then things go awry. So by 1933, when Desi's about 16 years old, comes the Cuban Revolution of 1933. And here's a British Pathé newsreel, just a little clip of what was happening to the Cuban government at the time.
Here are the actual scenes of running wild about celebrating Machado's downfall. Padre Melvin made these exclusive pictures at the risk of their lives. And bloody crowds surged through the streets, shouting for the blood of Machado and his henchmen. His hated police gunners, all his police dogs were tracked down and slain.
It was brutal because Desi's father was part of the government, even in an ancillary role. They just raised the ranches and the farms, slaughtered all the animals, and Mr. Arnaz, Desi's father, was put into jail, put into prison for 6 months. When he was finally released, he came here to Miami. And here's Mr. Arnaz, Senior, Desi's father, and he had a mantra. And his mantra was, there must be a way. And this would come up over and over and over in young Desi's life, that there must be a way around any obstacle. Now, he had been overthrown. He had lost everything, literally lost everything. Now he's here in Miami, and he's trying to get assimilated into the exile community that's being based here in Miami. So by November 1934, it's interesting. If you look in the Miami Herald, you'll see a party at the Hotel Deauville, and here's his name. He's already being listed in the society pages, as well as Alberto Barreras and Mrs. Montalvo. And these people will come up a little bit later. If you can't see it in the back, if you want to sit here on the floor, and no, won't do that. So this is November of 1934, where Mr. Arnaz, the former senator, is now showing up in the society pages in Miami. Desi joins his father. The mother would come later, but Desi joins his father a few months later, comes to America, arrives in Key West, comes to Miami, doesn't speak any English at all. But just a few weeks after his father's in the paper, well, now Desi is in the paper. And he's at a party of Lolita Montalvo, her 15th birthday party. So his father is sort of like pushing him out there, saying, look, you have a new country now. Participate, get to know these people. What Desi didn't have was a command of the English language. In fact, the first time he went out to eat by himself, he couldn't speak English, and he ordered 4 things, and the waitress is like, are you sure? And he said, yeah, I'm sure. And she brings him 4 bowls of soup. So one of the jobs he could get was through the Whitehouse family. Mr. Whitehouse, the father of some of his classmates, was selling canaries. And that was Desi's job. He would go out and he would clean these canary cages for like 25 cents a piece. And Mr. Whitehouse had a garage filled with canaries, and Desi would go around Miami cleaning these bird cages. That was the extent of his ambition at the time. And he said when the kids he went to school with would come by, he would hide because he was so embarrassed having to clean bird cages because he had come from wealth and privilege. His father, meanwhile, had joined up with a company called the Pan American Importing and Exporting Company. And they started with tile. And they started importing tile because people wanted to see nice fireplaces like this. And so once they got a load of tiles, the tiles were smashed completely. So they say, well, what do we do? Well, we've got enough money to buy bananas. Let's buy bananas from Puerto Rico. They import the bananas. Desi goes to pick them up at the dock. They're all rotten. The Pan American Import-Export Company folds. Desi goes back to his dad. He says, you know, we're sunk. They're living in a warehouse on Southwest 3rd Avenue. His dad, Desi would just cry when he saw his dad because his dad would be beating rats with a baseball bat just so they could sleep. That was their level of poverty. But when the Import-Export Company folded, Mr. Arnaz thinks, you know, there has to be a way. There has to be a way. He has all these broken tiles, and there's a guy who is building an apartment complex, and he wants some fireplaces with that fancy tile. So Mr. Arnaz says, there must be a way. I've got broken tile. I don't have a business anymore. So he gets Ricky. I'm sorry, Ricky. It's interchangeable. He gets Desi, and Desi's like now 16, 17 years old, and they go to this job, and the guy who owns the apartment complex is saying, yeah, this is a sort of fireplace that I want for each of my apartments. And Mr. Arnaz is looking at it, he goes, yeah, you know, you might want that, but you know what you might really want is what's really hot in Cuba right now. And he says, what's really hot in Cuba? He goes, broken tile. Look at this. And he's telling Desi in Spanish, it's like, go get the tile and go, you know. And so hours later, you know, Desi said his father's there. He's like putting a piece up. That looks great. Puts another piece up, and they end up with something like this. And the guy says, hey, you know, that does look pretty good. And Mr. Arnaz, Desi's father, is going, yeah, I knew you'd like it. And Desi's thinking, what the hell did Dad just do? So as he's starting to get accustomed to life here in Miami, and he's going to St. Patrick Catholic School right around the corner here, and he remembers this, saying, these were great days in Miami. Once he got past that initial shock, he said, on weekends, a bunch of us, maybe 6 or 7 guys, would put up $1 or so a piece and buy hot dogs, buns, Cokes, and beer. And our dates would bring along cakes and pies, blankets and pillows from their homes, and we'd be in business. I'd never forget those gorgeous nights on the beach with the moon over Miami. Doesn't that sound romantic? Yeah, he said there was no development from the Roney Plaza up to the Deauville. It was just all open beach. And then he adds, we ate and drank, sang and played, and screwed and screwed. It was fantastic. Yeah, so, you know, he might not speak the language, but he spoke the language of love. He's got the moves. Yeah, Desi definitely had the moves, and he knew it. He also got the benefit of mentors who would help him, especially this gentleman, Reverend William Berry, who ran the St. Patrick Catholic School. He was instrumental in getting Desi when he first arrived in America. He sent him to St. Leo Catholic. It's a Catholic monastery, I guess, or seminary, and where Desi could go and be around other Hispanics. But his father kept him away from others who spoke Spanish, wanted him to learn English. But Reverend Berry got him there. And when Desi was just about to graduate from school at 19, Reverend Berry said, no, if America's going to be your home, I want you to learn the language and the history. Stay 1 extra year in high school. And so Desi did. So he had that going for him. He was on the basketball team. And when he's a senior in high school, another mentor came along, this guy, Don Quintanas. And Don Quintanas, he was a numbers runner. So he was running bets back and forth for clients, but he also had a little combo, and he knew Desi played guitar, and he invites him to play. And his father, Mr. Arnaz, says, pardon my language, but he said, no son of mine's going to be a goddamn musician. And so what happens is Alberto Barreras, who was at the party with Mr. Arnaz in that first clip I showed you, he was the former governor. It was a former governor in Cuba. And so he was sort of the kingpin around here. And he talks to Dr. Arnaz, he was a doctor as well. And he says, listen, let your son play. It won't hurt his studies. He's a smart kid. Let him play with Don Quintanas. And so that's what he did. So Desi becomes part of the Cuban ambassadors playing with Don Quintanas. This is New Year's Eve in this upper left, the New Year's Eve party in 1936. It's Don and Desi playing there. They also played at the High Life Fronton. So he's starting to get a musical education. In his biography, his autobiography, Desi remembers things a little bit off, but he has a lot on his mind. His life was absolutely filled. So he made a little mistake, but basically that's what happened. He starts becoming a musician. And Don Quintanas, who was working for Alberto Barreras as the numbers runner, is playing in this combo. He also had another gig with a group called the Siboney Septet, and they were playing at the Roni Plaza Hotel. And there's no footage of Desi in the Siboney Septet, but just to show you what the music was like, how they looked, I was astounded to find this newsreel clip of the Siboney Septet playing there in 1934, the same time that Desi was arriving in America. So here's what they looked and sounded like. The dancers, by the way, are Raul and Eva Reyes. And Eva's a knockout. She's not a dog. Yeah, so I think that is absolutely cool. So that's the sort of stuff that Desi was playing. And when he joined the septet, it became a group of 7, so it became the sextet, Siboney Sextet. And so they're playing at the Roni Plaza Hotel at tea dances on Sunday afternoons. And at one point, Buddy Rogers, Charles Buddy Rogers, he was one of the first Academy Award winners, a matinee idol. He also had an orchestra going, and he was hired to play at the Roni Plaza. And Desi, in his autobiography, he's so sweet. He doesn't remember anyone with hatred. He just praises and lavishes praise on the people who helped him along. And when Buddy Rogers is going to be playing at the Roni Plaza, the Siboney Septet was playing at these larger dances. But when they would get up, the people who were coming there for the popular big band music would sit down. So Desi starts thinking, hey, he goes up to Mr. Rogers. He has the courage to go up to Mr. Rogers and he says, hey, could you, instead of stopping your song, could you play like The Peanut Vendor? That's a song we know as well. And as you're playing The Peanut Vendor, our piano player will join in, and then we'll have our guitarist get in, and then we'll just mix. And then everybody we won't have a break, and people we'll turn it into a rumba, and people who don't know how to rumba come rumba. And so he does it. It's really great. So one night they're playing, and now people are starting to catch on to rumba music, and Desi leaves the stage, and this guy looks at him and he says, hey kid, come over here. And that guy was Xavier Cugat. Yeah. So he says, kid, you've really got something. Beyond the septet, you've really got something. Would you like to join my band? And Desi is now, 19 years old. And he said, Mr. Cugat, I would love to, but I'm still in high school. And yeah, he's almost 20. But Cugat, he says, look, here's my card. When you graduate, give me a call. I want to get you in my band. So Desi graduates from St. Patrick's School in 1907 at the age of 20. And here he is. Here's his graduation photo. There he is right there. Here's his best friend, Sonny, in that red circle. And there's Joan Whitehouse, whose father used to sell canaries. So, there was a small community here. So you knew a lot of people. By the way, that is his best friend, Sonny. Sonny had a famous father as well. His father was Al Capone. Yeah, Al Capone. Yeah. So years later, when Desi did the Untouchables about, catching Al Capone, Sonny calls him up and says, do you really have to be that hard on Dad? He goes, yeah, I have to. So, Okay, some folks just arriving. You missed it. I just gave away a new car just 5 minutes ago. Anyway, so now Desi is on the road and he goes up to Billy Rose's Aquacade where the Xavier Cugat Orchestra is playing. It's this big, grand exhibition, really a spectacular, with a lot of women in bathing suits doing, synchronized swimming, and Desi is in his element. He says he's learning about, well, women, of course, but he's learning about how an orchestra is run. So while he's up in Cleveland doing this, down here in Miami, right down on 22nd, there was a guy named Mother Kelly. His name was Robert Kelly. The people called him Mother. He ran Mother Kelly's restaurant. It was sort of like the sloppy ghost of Miami. He had a son, Bobby. Who he was going to fund, was going to start this nightclub at a place called the Park Avenue on 22nd near Liberty. And so in any event, Desi tells Cugat, he's 20 years old, it's like, hey, I want to go off on my own. And Cugat says, okay, yeah, if you go off on your own, you can use my name. Just give me 25%. So Desi says, great, okay, I'll do that. I've got your name behind me. I can go. Desi comes back and he knows this club is about to open. This is December 1937. And Lou Nicoletti, who had been Xavier Cugat's right-hand man, quits Cugat and he goes with Desi. They go down to talk to Bobby Kelly, and Desi's acting like a big shot. He's got like $20, and he orders like a $10 bottle of champagne. The girl comes by, gets some cigars, and he's blowing all his money. He's acting like a big shot. Hey, I'm with Cugat. And Bobby Kelly's going, yeah, maybe I can get him. Lou Nicoletti is hustling Bobby Kelly as well. Eventually, they get to an agreement where Desi just walks out of the room like, I don't care if I get this job. Lou Nicoletti stays behind. He gets Desi $650 a week, $25 to Cugat, $70 for musicians. And so now Desi's got like a 2-month contract to play at the club. The only thing is, he doesn't have a band. He's been bluffing this whole time. So now he's got to wire Cugat. Now, remember, this is December. They're going to open the club around December 28th, 29th. And Cugat wires him. He says, trying to do best I can for you. Holiday's making it difficult. He can't find any musicians. It's New Year's Eve coming up. All the good guys are booked. So Desi's going nuts. It's like, I'm supposed to open. I've got this, two-month contract. What am I going to do? He goes down to the train station and Cugat says, the band is on his way, meet him at the train station. And he goes down to the train station and he finds a guy with a stand-up bass, a drummer, a pianist, a saxophonist, and a violinist. And he goes, what kind of hell band is this? He goes, they don't have any guitars, they don't have no trumpet, no bongos, no accordion. And he says, do you guys, know any Spanish music? Do you know any Latin music? It's like, no, we don't. And Desi's thinking, oh my God, I'm sunk. They go to the club that night. They rehearse for about 2 hours. They go to the club. They play their first set, and Bobby says, you guys are fired. Get out of here. You stink. Mr. Petrillo, who was with the union, musicians union, he said, hey, no, you've already signed this contract here, and they're booked, so you can't fire them just yet. And Bobby Kelly is thinking, oh, what do I do? These damn unions. And then between sets, the second set, he hates the band so much, he just has Desi go out there with his guitar, and Desi his guitar. And he's thinking, and Desi starts thinking, and he thinks of his father, and he thinks, what would Dad do? And then all of a sudden he has to think, there must be a way. There must be a way. And so he thinks about it, and he thinks back to Santiago, and he remembers these conga parties. He said they would last like 3 days. They would start in one village. The drums would go, and people would be hitting frying pans and conga drums, and they would just literally march. He said it was like hypnotic, and they would go from village to village to village, and everybody would get swept up into this dance. So he takes the band backstage, whatever backstage was, and he said the first and only time he's done it, he started passing around a bottle of Bacardi rum, saying, take a shot. He says, I'm going to give you a frying pan. I'm going to give you some wood blocks, some spoons from the kitchen. And you just go, can you go ding, 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 ding? And the guy's going ding, 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 ding. He goes, no, ding, 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 ding. And he teaches them the conga rhythm. They go back for the next set, and Desi's got his conga drum, and Lou Nicoletti's there. And Desi goes, hey, I'm going to introduce a dance that's really popular in New York. Popular in New York, you say? And it's like, yeah, it's called the conga. And Lou knows how to get it started. And Desi starts beating his conga drum, and Lou Nicoletti said, come on, folks, follow me. And he gets one girl behind him, and they start like shuffling around, and Desi's now on top of the bar, hitting his conga drum, and they're like marching around the bar, and Desi's thinking, what the hell's happening here? And then he takes them outside, walks them around Collins Park, goes back into the club, and all of a sudden, it's just bedlam. It's just like, they are absolutely beside themselves. This was taken later. This is at La Conga in New York. And now Bobby Kelly is just a complete fan. It's like, how did you guys do this? And he's going to call the club Desi's Place. And Desi says, no, just call it La Conga. So now he's like a darling of Bobby Kelly. And he's a darling of Miami media. Here he is down here playing at La Conga Club. There's Desi Arnaz. He starts making the society pages. His name starts showing up, nightclub notes, Peter Pell, Staying Up with the Stars. So he becomes known as King Conga. It starts this national conga craze, started right over here on 22nd Street. By 1939, now he's leading the orchestra. It's called There Comes the Conga. It's Desi Arnaz and his La Conga Orchestra. And all of this happens overnight. He called that his dance of desperation. He was desperate, but it worked. And so he comes to Miami, and they said, Desi Arnaz and his band dispenses the tropical rhythms hot and smoky as they should be. Desi, incidentally, is our idea of what the Latin temperament should be like, and is in no small way responsible for the current success of La Conga. So he's made a hit now in Miami. Where is he going next? He's going to New York City. And I'm skipping over a few things, but he gets to New York City and he gets cast in a play called Too Many Girls, perfect for Desi. And there he is. He plays a character named Manuelito Lynch. So he's performing in this Broadway musical that George Abbott is producing. He's becoming a star in New York. When he's not doing the show, he's at La Conga Club with a co-star from Too Many Girls. Before and after the theater, this guy, he's just dynamic. He's supercharged, and he's becoming a huge hit in New York City. So he's playing at La Conga Club, and when he's not at the club, he would finish his set about like 4 or 5 in the morning, and then he'd go back to where he was staying, which was at Polly Adler's house, or house? Maybe it's a house. Polly Adler was the most popular, successful madam in New York. So he was living at a whorehouse, and he absolutely loved it. So here's Desi. I mean, what's not to love? You know, when you look at that picture. And some of you from What's My Line might remember Dorothy Kilgallen. Dorothy Kilgallen fell in love with Desi. And she wrote one of the first columns that mentions Desi Arnaz. Desi is 22 years old, tall, slender, and energetic. He has thick, black, shiny hair, worn fairly long. Sounds a little bit like Elvis. The best thing he does, she says, is climb down from the orchestra podium and lead a conga line, beating time with his hands on the face of the drum, dancing and grinning and shouting like a tribal chieftain, whipping his followers into a frenzy while in the background his native band supports him with the primitive thunder of the conga music. At these moments, the nightclub becomes a wild temple dedicated to delirium. Yeah, it's really fantastic. So now he's gone from Miami, a success here, New York, a success there. Now they're going to turn Too Many Girls into a movie, and Desi's going to play a part. So he goes out to Hollywood, and he gets in the cast of Too Many Girls. Tell him I'll be a few minutes. And when he shows up for his first time in Hollywood, he sees his co-star. And here's young Desi, and he sees his co-star is Lucille Ball. Yeah, and once he saw her, he comments to his friend, he says, "What a hunk of woman." Yeah. So they were married November 1940, and here they are, November 30th, 1940. And they became a very, very popular couple with the gossip columnists in the trade magazines because they just looked great. And this is on those. Of course. Yeah. So, would you like some more ham, dear? Anyway. they buy a little ranch called Chatsworth, and Ricky is he's now successful in the homes and farms and ranches that were burned down in Cuba. He is now recreating in California, in San Fernando Valley. But he still has to make a living. He's not appearing in movies all the time, so he's taking his band back out on the road. And so he would come back to the Rumba Casino, which is back by 22nd Street. And when he's on the road, whether he's in Miami or whether he's in New York City performing with his orchestra or wherever he's at, and Lucy's back in Hollywood, they would get on the phone each evening and catch up on the day. But Lucy would also see in the gossip columns, Ricky's hanging around with Dolores Costello or somebody else, and it's like really jealous, and they would have these screaming, shouting arguments, and she would hang up on him, or he would hang up on her, and then like a minute later, then the operator would step in. Lucy was always surprised that the operators knew when they were calling. There was like a juicy argument that they could tune into, and Lucy would say, the operator would ring her up right after she hung up on Desi and say, oh, this poor guy's out on the road. Why are you doing this to him? Just think, he's in his hotel and he's probably crying now. I'll connect you. And Lucy go, okay. And so they would kiss and make up and break up. And this was going around constantly. In late 1942 and early 43, Desi is cast in Baton, as a soldier, Felix Ramirez. And I couldn't find his death scene in this, but they said it's one of the best death scenes. He's just intrinsically a performer. I wish I could have found that clip for you. But art imitates life, and in 1943, Desi joins the Army. He's not fit for active or combat duty, but he does join, and he starts running USO shows and theatricals, working the Hollywood canteen, basically trying to, build morale, boost morale for a lot of these troops that were coming into California. Also in 1943, October 43, he gets his certificate of naturalization. He's now an American citizen. And he absolutely adores America, as you'll see later when we get to that point. Is just completely swept up in America. And he is also completely swept up in Lucy, even though she files for divorce in 1944. He's very persuasive, and he convinces her, let's keep the marriage together. And thank goodness they did, because we would have lost all the things that came later. After World War II, Desi is back out on the road, and they've got motion picture studios shooting promotional clips for him. And here's one of them. And it's when you're trying to get your career going again, especially after the war and you've been out of the public eye, you'll do pretty much anything, as you'll see in this. And I guess at the time, Latin Americans were interchangeable, and you'll see that in the second part of this clip.
A preview of the new band. A preview that carries the prediction of even greater achievement for its leader, Desi Arnaz. After successfully mastering 2 careers, leading man of the New York stage and star of the screen, Desi is now embarked upon his 3rd venture, and we're confident that in a very short time, you'll be hearing a lot more of Desi Arnaz and his orchestra.
He's giving it everything he's got. Yeah. So meanwhile, while he's doing that, Lucy is on radio with Richard Denning as Liz and George Cooper in a program called My Favorite Husband. And they had great writers, Jess Oppenheimer and Madeline Pugh and Bob Carroll Jr. writing for My Favorite Husband. Super successful. Desi is back in the movies in 1949. He shoots Holiday in Havana. And, but again, they're being separated. He's still going out on the road with the orchestra. The operator is, trying to patch things up. Lucy says, if we're going to be married, we've got to keep things together. And so they agree. They come up with this brilliant solution. Hey, why don't we do a vaudeville tour? In late 49, we'll go out on the road together. Lucy's a success. She's queen of the B's, B movies. She never really made it to the A movies. Desi is still pretty popular. They go out together as Cuban Pete and Sally Sweet. They do some of the routines they used to do on the I Love Lucy show. And now radio is starting to phase out. Television's coming in, and it's like, maybe we can do a show together. We're testing it out on the road. People seem to like us, but wait a second, this guy's Cuban. If we get into TV, CBS wants my husband, Lucy's husband, to be the white guy, Richard Jennings. It's like, no, it's like, it's gotta be Desi. It's gotta be Desi. And they fight for it. And finally a CBS exec says, hey, they've been married a while. Maybe it could be Desi and Lucy as husband and wife, where she's the sort of scatterbrained, scheming housewife who wants to get into show business, and he's the struggling band leader. Perfect setup. I mean, ideal for what they would do. So now they've got this on the record, okay, you can get started on this, but we have to see something first. So to their credit, they invest $5,000 and shoot a pilot. This is the lost episode. They shoot a pilot without Fred and Ethel, just themselves doing this shtick. It's not really great and was never shown, but they showed it to advertisers, and Philip Morris finally picked up on the program and said, okay, we'll fund this. But now they're going to do the show, and Desi thinks, there must be a way. We've got the show. I'm going to be your husband. But now what? They want us to go to New York to shoot this. We live in California. And if we live in California, all they're going to do is show kinescopes, and the kinescopes are going to look horrible. So and Lucy works best in front of a live audience. We can't just shoot it with one camera and then have her do the joke again and have me do the setup again. And so he starts thinking, there must be a way. There must be a way. So he starts thinking, okay, first, we're going to get a sound stage. We're going to get a theater where Lucy and the rest of us can work in front of a live audience. Next, we're not going to use just one camera and have to do the same joke 3 times because it loses its impact. We're going to work 3 cameras. To do that, they had to invent something called the 3-headed monster. They would shoot it on 3 cameras, and then they'd have the 3 reels in the take-up reel, which would be the master, and they could put it all together. They'd have a tight shot, a medium shot, and a wide shot, all synchronized at once, and they could pick which one they wanted to use for more impact. Desi is inventing all of this. They have to get lighting. These people were saying, you can't light for a close-up, a medium shot, and a wide shot. It has different lighting demands. He gets Carl Freund, who had worked on Casablanca, I believe on Frankenstein as well. He was a genius with lighting. So he invents this grid that's going to go over this whole set, and all the lighting would be even. So Desi invents that. Every obstacle they gave him, he just surpassed. I don't know how he did it. Love this guy. Yeah, there must be a way. There must be a way. And then they had to acknowledge that you would have to have a star who could look like this, but she wouldn't mind looking like this. If it's going to be a comedy. And a star who could look like this, who wouldn't mind looking like this. And then you have to get the next door couple, William Frawley and Vivian Vance, spread knuckle Morris. William Frawley was a popular character actor, but he was a bad alcoholic. And Desi said, look, if I hire you, if you show up drunk one time, one morning, twice, you're fired. And William Frawley never showed up drunk. He always showed up and hit his mark and did his bit. Vivian Vance was an unknown stage actress, popular, but pretty much unknown. But she takes the role of Ethel Mertz. They hated each other. They really did. But, they worked it out perfectly. So they create the Desilu Playhouse, and each night they would pass out 300 tickets, and the audience would come in and they would do this live in front of a studio audience, just like All in the Family, just like other shows. Desi's idea. So here's what you would see. These were the later credits. They had different credits when the show originally aired, but I Love Lucy, starring Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz with Vivian Vance and William Frawley. And the idea for the show was going to be called The Lucille Ball Show, but Lucy really didn't like that idea. She said, Desi's left out of it. An ad exec came up with the idea, I Love Lucy, and Desi liked it because he got top billing. Hey, well, hey, I'm the I here. So I Love Lucy. And in the first season, she looked like this. It's Lucy, but it's not quite Lucy. Would you agree? Yeah, so Eloise Jensen was the wardrobe designer. And she came up with a better look for Lucy. So in the second season, you started seeing Lucy. Look, she's still a housewife, but a pretty contemporary housewife with these beautiful gowns and dresses and suits. But so she was sexy in a comic way. Desi was sexy in a comic way, but he was also just extraordinarily dynamic as a performer. From the first season, there was a show called The Audition. I'm only going to show you a little clip of this one bit, but this is a badass Babalu. Isn't that wild? Isn't that wild? Yeah. Yeah, just in front, it's like he's like a one-man drumming circle, and you watch him, and he's very much like Elvis. He just has that magnetism when you watch him. Now, 11 million families each week would tune into I Love Lucy when that was only when we had 15 million television sets in America. That's how popular this show was. Some department stores would shut down on Monday night because everybody's home watching I Love Lucy. And then in 1952, they find out Lucy is pregnant, and they have to figure out, or she's expecting. They have to figure out how they do this. And I don't know how to pronounce this word in Spanish. Enciente? I'm sorry? Enciente. So they had to call the title of that show, that episode, Lucy the Enciente, because they couldn't say pregnant on television. So they had to figure out how to introduce this. And they said, hey, we'll just take you off. We'll put another show on while Lucy's pregnant. And Desi's going, no, let's incorporate this into the show. And Bob Terrell Jr. and Madeline Pugh and Jess Oppenheimer can write this in, and it opens up a lot of comic possibilities. And if you've watched those episodes, you know absolutely it's true. But CBS kept pushing back. So Desi writes a letter to the chairman of Philip Morris, and he says, look, we've been giving you a #1 show for the last 2 years. We've had creative control. Now CBS wants creative control. So it's up to you. Either we're not responsible if the show starts to tank because of CBS taking over. And the head of Philip Morris sends a telegram to the head of CBS, and he says, and you can read it. Yes. Yeah. And so the show stayed. Yeah. And they live happily ever after. So And one of the things I love about the show, like Andy Griffith is my other favorite program, you can cry and you can laugh at the same time, almost simultaneously. I'm going to show you just a clip of one of their arguments, and I would love somebody who speaks Spanish to tell me later what Ricky is saying. But then the second part of this clip is when Lucy is trying to tell Ricky that she's expecting, and he doesn't know it yet. He's gone the whole episode without knowing it, but he has to find out at the Club Tropicana who the pregnant woman is. And so watch this, and I guarantee you'll be, you'll get choked up.
You make fun of me, that's English. Oh dare you say that to me? I don't know. How dare you? You will get this first of its family. Pero que me decía ni que iba a viajar en inglés para poder cuidarme. En cambio de todo lo que sabe, muchísimo pecho, lo mejor de todo este capitán en aquí. I'm whatever you're ready to call me, I'll apologize to copy me on the ground. No, you're correct.
She realizes it's her.
I don't know. No, really? No. Why did you come on? Oh, we didn't give me a shit. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, isn't that great? Yeah, it's just beautiful. Hey, Dan. Oh, okay, great. Yeah. Hey, Steve, how are you, sir? Yeah, so that episode, I mean, it became so popular, they even used it on stamps in Gambia. And when the baby was born on January 19th, 1953, makes, a few months later, makes the cover of TV Guide. 72 million people tuned into that episode on January 19th. The following day, Dwight Eisenhower was inaugurated. He got 58 million viewers. So that's how popular. But Desi and Lucy, to their credit, they never forgot who was really behind the show. It was their crew. All of the people, the writers, the camera people, the gaffers, the production assistants, and they would have a picnic, the Desilu picnic every year. So they would get the awards, but they would come back and have a big party. Remember how I told you that Desi loved America so much? You might remember this episode where Lucy cannot tell a lie. See ya. Oh, did you want me to say hello? Oh, yeah. Would you mind if we take a short intermission? I'd like to introduce Steve Miner. Is that what you like, Daniel? Mayor. Our new mayor. Right back there. Thank you, Mayor. And I hope to see this gentleman, I'll talk about him in just a few minutes because he's instrumental in something that is about to happen. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Mayor. So this was when she couldn't tell a lie. The original storyline was that Ricky was going to be lying about his taxes. And Desi Arnaz says, no, I can't do that. I don't lie about my taxes. I love this country too much. And as evidence of that, in 1954, in October of 54, Ed Sullivan had a show called Toast of the Town, where he'd have a celebration for certain stars. Tonight was their night. And when it's Desi's turn to talk, this is what he says.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you, Ed. Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I think if it would have been for Lucy, I would have stopped trying a long time ago because I was hoping the guy that didn't fit. When she did my favorite husband on radio, they said that I would be the type to play the part. Then finally she wanted to do the television show, and she said, well, I want to do the Desi. So everybody again said, well, it's not right to play your husband. Finally, one executive of CBS said, well, maybe the audience won't buy him, because after all, they have been married for 13 years. And you know something, I really won't tell you. And what Tess O'Rourke said about my first job in this country was cleaning birthdays. It's very true. We came to this country, we didn't have a cent in our pockets. From cleaning canary cages to this night here in New York, it's a long ways. And I don't think there's any other country in the world that would give you that opportunity. I would say thank you America. Thank you.
Yeah. So beautiful. There we go. Yeah. So isn't that that's one of my favorite moments. So in 1956, November 56, Desi returns to Miami with the cast of I Love Lucy. They're given the key to the city. And in 1956, he and Lucy sell I Love Lucy to CBS for $4.3 million. So they were able to do that. The next year, they used that money plus a little bit more to buy RKO Studios, which is where they shot Too Many Girls. He did that. They shot that in 1940? So 17 years later, they buy the whole studio. And Desi is now one of the leading producers in Hollywood. He sells his shares of Desilu to Lucy in 1962. It has 35 sound stages. They shoot over 200 movies a year and dozens of television shows. They have divorced by now. It's 1960. They never stopped loving each other. But Desi said he just didn't have that thermostat that would allow him to stop working. And it was just the pressure of everything that broke up their marriage, that they were just deeply in love with each other for the rest of their lives. And when Desilu is really going in the 60s. If you're watching television in the 60s, look at the name of some of the shows that either are created by Desilu or shot on their sound stages. A lot of the credit goes to Lucy, who was the first female president of a major motion picture studio. That was her. And this was taken in that same photo shoot. You just see, Desi just looks worn out. Their marriage is busted up, but, you know, there's still that love there. So throughout the 1960s, Desi is still producing television programs or executive producers. In 1976, he writes a book, an autobiography, which is fantastic. It's hard to get now, but if you can find it, I'd suggest you pick up a copy. Also in 1976, based on the book, he's on Saturday Night Live, called NBC's Saturday Night. And there was something in here. Yeah, on November 30th of 1986, Lucy calls Desi, and Desi Arnaz is with her father, and she just hears her mother over the phone saying, "I love you, honey. I love you, honey. I love you, honey. I love you, honey." And Desi's going, "I love you too, darling. I love you too, honey." That was just 2 days before he died. So Lucy got to say goodbye to Desi, and Desi always loved Lucy. He said, "I Love Lucy" was never just a title. So several movies have come up referencing Desi and Lucy. The Mambo Kings sort of borrow. Desi Arnaz Jr. plays Desi Arnaz, his father. Then Being the Ricardos by Aaron Sorkin. Amy Poehler did this documentary, Lucy and Desi. What has Desi left? 180 half-hour episodes continuously on the air in over 100 markets since going into reruns in 1959. 80 countries around the world, 22 languages, cast a Hispanic lead, first one to do that, very brave. 3-camera, incorporated Lucy's pregnancy. You can read it all right here. What Desi created, and it all started here. If you go to Jamestown, New York, you can go to the National Comedy Museum where they have the Lucille Ball or Desi Arnaz Museum within this comedy center with mock-ups of the sites. A few years ago, I love Lucy since I was a kid. I wrote a few books for National Geographic. One was about becoming a naturalized citizen. And when I would do a talk about that, I would always reference Desi Arnaz. And so a few years ago, I started thinking, well, you know, there's a lot of tributes to Lucy. There's only 2 tributes to Desi. These Hollywood Walk of Fame things, it doesn't really say anything about his life. So, I started thinking of these Florida historic markers. You've got several of them in Miami. And here's a list of the ones, just a quick list of the ones that are in Miami. There you go. Miami-Dade County. None of those are dedicated to a single man. You've got Barbara Bear Capman, you've got Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and you've got Julia Tuttle. But none to a man until I petitioned the state. And so we've got the Desi Arnaz historic marker coming up in just a few months, thanks to Mayor Minor. Well, he's not there anymore. But so here's the resolution. What? Oh, where? Let me tell you. I'll show you where. And I just went there yesterday for the first time. Collins Park. See where this musical note is? It's probably going to go right around here, maybe over here. This is the Miami City Ballet, which is on the site of the old La Conga. Yeah, so it's right across from there. And it ends, the marker, which my wife Nancy and I, we worked on for months trying to get the verbiage right. It ends with Desi saying, thank you, America, which is a perfect ending. And we have Desi to thank for all that he gave us. So if you live here in Miami and you're interested in this project, here's my wish list. I would love to have Desi Arnaz Day proclaimed in Miami Beach, the Cuban America community involved through sponsorships and promotions, a party in the park, get Lucy and Desi Jr. and Gloria and Amelia Estefan, if anybody knows them. Call them, have them be at the unveiling in a few months. Comments from Aaron Sorkin and Amy Poehler, media coverage in the Miami City Ballet, leading a conga line. I think that would be great. Great. I'll get to your questions and comments.